think we're getting there. It's uploading us, which means we could actually be live and I don't know it.
It says we are.
Oh, good. Then I bet we are. Okay. Okay, here we go. There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live session with Miss Sasha Benedetti over there. And we both have on this velvety, textured, very Venetian energy kind of bodysuits, which I absolutely love. I feel like it's the right outfit for this talk, for sure. I just feel like there has to be an outfit. I mean, you saw like I wore a hat to this last event we did together. So it's all the Venus. Yeah, but tonight we are going to talk about Venus and Venus retrograde, and Sasha's going to bring in the Venus cycle for us. So we're going to talk about what all of this means, what does it look like, and then how do we use it, and also how globally is this impacting us and directing our attention as well. So welcome, Sasha. Thank you so much for being here and being with us. This is a treat.
Thanks for having me
around you.
Oh, I like being around you too. This is fun.
Yeah, you got a good vibe. Have you ever been that way? Like, you know, you meet another person and you're like, oh, okay, that's lovely.
Absolutely. And that's so much, Venus is like that resonance, that connection. So it's perfect. Yeah, I'm feeling it with you.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Well, a little housekeeping before we jump in and we start to talk about this delicious Venus energy. Make sure you guys get signed up for the 65,000 subscriber gift. It is down in the description box down below, and we'll be doing a teaching session for 4 weeks this time instead of the traditional gift. So make sure you get signed up. Like I said, everything's in the description box down below or at stormygrace.com. And also make sure you pop over and check out Sasha's page and her work, and just all the Venus happening over there is really good stuff. So you can find her links and every way to connect with her in the description box down below as well. So welcome everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Now we are going to be experiencing Venus retrograde, the official stationing of the retrograde, May 13th until June 25th this year. So it's right around the corner. Venus, she's busy. You know, I do kind of enjoy that about her. She's a little bit of a wise busybody. Like even when she's not retrograding, I just feel like she's always got something going on and she's always spreading some kind of vibe, you know? But right now she's out of bounds and has also moved into shadow. So what's happening when we're moving into shadow is things are starting to slow down for that planet. And for us, our attention is being angled towards what that planet is going to help us walk towards, see, readjust during the full retrograde time. So if you've got these areas of your life where that Venus is in Gemini and you're starting to be like, well, now hold on, this felt like it was just flowing the other day. What happened? We're in a little bit of a slow. We're going to get ready to change directions and really re-dig into the value of those areas. So nothing's broken, I promise. But if it is, you'll get to find out during the retrograde, right?
Yeah.
So with Venus being out of bounds, what do you think about that, Miss Sasha? That is a whole wild ride, which it happens often.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, there's so much about this cycle that's special. So the way that I'm reading that just symbolically is she's like, hey, this is not a usual Venus situation going on here. Heads up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, given the state of the nations right now, her call to the wisdom of you have to look beyond where you're at, or you have to look just to the left over here, right? Like I want to show you this information just to the left over here, because that's where the new truths are going to be. And it's okay. It's not about, though, this idea, I don't think, of get out of your comfort zone. It's literally turn around and look another direction.
Beautiful.
Right?
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah. And, I'm feeling that so much in general, that we're starting to get into the energy of the next Venus cycle, which actually starts smack dab in the middle of that retrograde on June 3rd when she meets the sun, right? That's the illumination, the heart and sun come together. And what you're saying, I love that about just look to the left. You know, the Venus and Gemini, the way that I've been just feeling it and interpreting it is so much about being open, being curious. And, you know, with the new, well, I don't know how astro techy you want to get in this, you know, how your people are, but, you know, we're going to be having this larger invitation with the North Node also going into Gemini, that it feels like they're a team, you know, so that look to the left is really like, okay, folks, we're reimagining culture now.
Yes.
And
yeah,
it's time to be more open-minded and more open-hearted than we've ever been as we come into this endeavor together. So I think that it's all pointing in that direction.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and then it's like, so we have that node, and then if we just bring just over to the other side, we've got Vesta. Right? Our asteroid Vesta, the keeper of hearth and home. And Vesta is so, not so much, I love her for the keeper of our homes, keeper of where the fires are really burning, but also she is so great at breaking things down into smaller digestible components that being in this energy of Gemini, it's like, hey, we've got a big chunk of truth to swallow, but we've also got, we can eat it one little bite at a time together. Right?
Oh,
We don't
lovely.
have to make this whole shift by Tuesday.
Yeah. I
Right?
love that. I love that.
Thank goodness. So you started talking a little bit about the Venus cycle, and I would please share about that because I don't want anybody to miss out on that. And it's so, the way you explain it
Yeah.
is so beautiful. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna let you
Okay.
roll.
Super. So, you know, I just am so passionate about teaching people to sync with the Venus cycle. A lot of people sync with the moon, and they've had that experience. And I feel like there's something about this particular next cycle. So if you've never followed the Venus cycle before and you don't even know what that means, you know, this is such a divine time to tap into that energy and to really harness the support that's there to live more deeply into our hearts, to live more deeply into our bodies, to create a culture of care, connection, collaboration, and really let this whole dominator situation fall that's been ruling the planet since our oldest stories. You know, whatever we want to call that, you know, the hierarchy, the patriarchy, the tyranny, you know, just letting that power overfall. And so I feel like the Venus cycle is such a beautiful way to align us so that we can be available to each other, know our truth, and make sure that our power is wed with kindness, because that's really the initiation into the Venus mysteries. And so let's see. So let's just unpack this. So the Venus cycle is the moment when Venus meets the sun, and Venus is essentially in between the sun and the earth. And so it's like a conception, you know, it's really that the energy of the heart, the feminine energy, we might call it, the relational energy, beauty, love. I mean, everything that's amazing and yummy going on the earth has to do with Venus. Like you take away Venus, we're like, who wants to be here? You
Right?
know?
Like, it's okay, but I mean,
you know, all the deliciousness of life and the sensuality and just the connection, really, which is so up right now because we're having much less of the connection that we've had in the past with these isolations that we're in. So when Venus meets the sun, she basically starts a new 19 and a half month cycle. And so that's going to happen on June 3rd. And the way that I hold it and see it is, you know, this part of the Venus cycle all the way up to June 3rd. Well, as soon as she goes retrograde on May 13th, we're really in this reset, that period where she's falling from the evening sky as she is now. If you've gone out and seen her, she's amazing. She's twinkling. She's so bright and in the west setting, pretty late still. And then she's going to disappear for sometimes around 40 days. It depends on where you are, and then reappear as morning star. So she only goes retrograde at that part of her 19 and a half month cycle. And I think that's only like what, 7% of the time.
7%.
So it's a really big deal when Venus, or Mercury goes retrograde a lot, but when Venus goes retrograde, it's more significant because it's more rare. And so I'm really feeling the reset energy of that part of the cycle. So the first part, between May 13th and June 3rd, is really like, okay, let's recapitulate. What have we learned since this Venus cycle started late October of 2018? Because that's the last 19 and a half month cycle, right?
So that's a good place where you guys can check in right then. What have you learned? Where are your values sitting right from then? And as we come up to June, that's the great check-in time.
Totally. And she was conceived at 3 degrees Scorpio. So if you have anything around 3 degrees Scorpio, that was the site of the Venus Sun meetup back in late October. And when was that? That was like the 26th of October. And then November 1st, she appeared. Okay. So she was conceived in Scorpio, and then she appeared in Libra. So she's straddling 2 different energetics, which is actually really unusual. Usually she seeds in the same sign as she rises, but 2. And so for me, the signature of that is taking that scorpionic energy of the shadow of how the feminine has been repressed and abused, and the toxic versions of feminine and the toxic versions of kind of victim perpetrator dynamics, and it all came out, didn't it?
Yeah.
You think back, it all came out.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so that's in the collective, but then in our own internal world, the assignment was to feel into all those hurt places and those trauma places, and we all have them on some level. And then rising in Libra, how do we then balance in true equanimity with those who we love and we've created trusted containers with? How do we balance our own healthy masculine and feminine energy within in order to be more whole, which is so cool. This is so great that now Vesta, at the very end of this cycle, she's flying with Vesta, because Vesta is all about wholeness, right? The original Vestal virgins were whole unto themselves. So we've really had this opportunity to deepen into our wholeness by being radically honest about how we've been hurt and not weaponizing that hurt, coming to the table open-hearted in the face of our deepest wounds and saying, this is what I'm needing. This is what happened, like with the Me Too, there was a lot of outpouring, and let's move forward together. Let's not stay in blame. Let's move forward together so we can actually create these powerful partnerships and change the world. So that's kind of the vibe that I've been riding for 18 and a half months.
You're like, just 18 and a half months, just, a short jot. Yeah. But I think it's beautiful to identify it and put it into context, because I do believe that many of us have been seeing that and having that experience, but also to be able to tie it back into where is this in the cycle of the actual astrology and the technique, and how do I find that, and how do I look back on that? It's beautiful to be able to put some words to that, right? Mm-hmm. So the other thing I keep thinking about is because Venus is in Gemini as all of this work is being done right now, that the communication and learning piece of this is simply not limited to relationships. It's so big. It is so big. We're in isolation right now. So even in terms of how we do relate and connect and converse and teach each other, we're going to be rethinking that during this retrograde heavily. And that idea too, just that Venus Libra place, how does Libra not lose its voice again, right? Yes. How does it not, how do we not fall off? So in the most communicative sign that we've got, we're going to definitely be figuring out how to do that, which includes relooking at what does schooling look like for us now. We're going to really
Yes.
have to reevaluate that. Not to mention, we were talking off camera of how much is going on around this time that also pushes us into that internal call. Is that just a couple days before Venus actually takes the retrograde at this point, Saturn is going to go retrograde. So we are immediately put into that position of relooking at the structures that we've had and what have we learned during quarantine, right? That'll be a good jam. Mercury will move into Gemini. So now we really have some conversation going. Venus will take a retrograde. And then right behind that, our other benefic planet, Jupiter, will take a retrograde. So it is a busy time that genuinely asks for that reflection of value, right? That reflection of Venus wisdom. And I think the thing that you said that I think about with all of that is how to take the stuff, say the stuff, teach the stuff, share the information. And it is not a weapon. Gemini wants information, but it needs to be new information next to that node. And we get this gentle opportunity with that south node to unthink and unlearn and question some things that we have thought and learned and believed for maybe something different. So
yeah, I'm feeling that. And just the you know, what's not going to maybe work, I mean, I don't know how it's ever worked, but is righteousness. Like those rigid, you know, the sad shed there is like, let's get off of our soapboxes. Let's ask questions. What do you mean by that? Tell me more. Oh, you feel that way? Oh, you know, and just really opening up the conversation is where all the evolution feels like it's going to happen for what we're going in to create next.
absolutely. And I don't even know, like, I don't know that we would have a true pathway forward without this divine timing, right? We're getting ready to like launch an entire culture across this globe into some true tele living. And how do we stay human in that, right? How do you keep that heart centered connection when you're not used to being virtual with someone, right? Even how do you stay heart centered when you're not used to having everybody in your house? That's a big deal that people are kind of getting to learn and relive and investigate at this particular time as well. So there's this aspect that I always like try to be mindful of, and it's around that Saturn energy and that place where I feel like during this retrograde, and tell me if this echoes for you, but it's that place where we really have to own it. You know, like I feel like a Saturn retrograde, especially for us here at the end of Capricorn, is like, all right, team, we've had 2 and some change years. We've all grown, we've all come up another level. So let's just take a look back and make sure we really did a good job at this section, right? But while Venus is retrograde here, it's like that looking back to say, no, wait a minute, I'm standing here allowing myself to be unhappy, right? I'm consuming content that keeps me spinning until 3 o'clock in the morning, right? I've forgotten how to get down into my body and enjoy that orgasm, right? And enjoy delicious food I've been consuming to just keep me awake, right? Like where do you see Saturn's influence in keeping us responsible?
That is so on point. I feel that greatly. And in that last review of, you know, Saturn's going retrograde to go to pop back into Capricorn and finish up business there. And so, yeah, taking responsibility in whatever, you know, and this is where it's so brilliant to know where Capricorn is in our chart, where Gemini is in our chart, like what area of our life have we been asked to really step it up and mature by taking responsibility and by committing more deeply to what we do value and what we do care about. And it feels like we're definitely all growing up together, you know, because Pluto's still in Capricorn here for some time, been so since 2008, you know. That was kind of one of the first ripples that led to this moment is Pluto moving into Capricorn. And I thought it was really interesting too. I went back and I looked, and Venus was conjunct Pluto when Pluto moved into Capricorn. So I felt like she was right there being like, yo, you know, medicine of the heart, you know, is going to get you through. This is not going to be easy. You're going to be stripped. You're going to be transformed.
Right.
Come back to the connection with your own heart and being sure to create those relationships with other humans. And
Yeah.
our emotional intelligence is so precious, and it's something that can't be duplicated by AI.
Right. Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I just like had this vision too of Venus giving Pluto that little whisper, because Venus is one of our benefic planets. So even as she's retrograde, whatever she's doing, she's really trying to bring some benefit to the table. So whispering at old Pluto over there, first of all, he probably really enjoyed that. And second, I think we were all like, and the United States is coming to a Pluto return here after not too long. I think she was really like, it's okay, keep your eyes right here,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Now, with other Venetian energies, when the planets are going retrograde, you also want to know what their signs are doing, what's happening in those areas. Right now, Taurus is being shaken and not stirred by Uranus. Okay, so Uranus is actually considered in fall in this position. Taurus doesn't like to be jostled, right? And Uranus is a happy jostler. So we've got this other Venetian energy, which will also during this retrograde be stimulated, because we're going to have to relook at food. We're going to have to relook at money. Money is a big deal for us personally and globally. So I think during the retrograde, one of the things we're gifted to do is heal what you've got going on financially. And Venus is in Gemini. Ask questions, throw your hands up and say, okay, look, I don't know what to do with this concept in my life. If you have a rift between you and money, right? Or if your money's going great, but you're like, what do I do next? This is a time for questioning. Globally, I think this will be a big deal too, because we're going to just really reflect on the value of money, and it will be in that very Uranian shaken up way. It won't be traditional.
Yeah.
Right. It won't, many budgets from some of our biggest governing bodies will have to be reviewed. They will absolutely have to. We have been sent into quarantine. There's a lot of stuff they didn't plan for. There's a lot of stuff we didn't plan for. I could spend $1 million in groceries over here, right? Like I gotta get a different relationship with money this last week, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting. I love that you're bringing up Uranus and Taurus, it being in Venus's sign. One of the things that I've also been really aware of is at that moment on October 28th, when she met the sun, it was in opposition to Uranus in Taurus. So right across the chart there was Uranus being like, yeah, this is going to be a Venus cycle that's going to be the beginning of this huge change on the planet. And Uranus was visible, which doesn't always happen. It's pretty rare that with the naked eye, sometimes we can see Uranus, and Uranus is special in a lot of ways. And I feel like that's one, just like the renegade, right? The rebel, the other outer planets we can't see with our naked eye. So I've been tuning into that and like, get your garden going on. Here in Sonoma County, everyone's planting their pandemic victory garden. We're all out there. We're like, all right, in our gardens.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense though. It's re-stimulating a lot of things I think were, the past ways of doing things, because the node, that transiting south node, is still useful. He is saying some things were great. Please pay attention to that. But, as everything's shifting, it's like, what's your relationship to the information? Is it still valuable to you today? And many things about how we eat, how we house, how we use finances will be locked up in that as well. And that Uranus energy, he's the only one kind of doing it different. So I think that's interesting. I didn't know about the opposition, but it seems like it has genuinely left us at this place for at least the next year or two, where to resolve or ease the opposition, we have to find the middle ground. So a good mix of everything. I was talking about this with somebody else. I'm like, even in our healthcare system, right? Or just in our systems in general, we might find, at least in the United States, this mix of this like socialistic, capitalistic, hybrid situation, right?
Innovating to meet the moment, for sure.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious when you see the beginning of the age of Aquarius. I know different astrologers have different views on that. I'm going with December 21st, 2020. I'm going with that, that Jupiter Saturn conjunction. Not that there hasn't been preview leading up to it, but
Sure.
I'm curious, how do you see our entrance? Have you landed on a spot for that?
Yeah, well, I did. I landed exactly the same place that you did. So I intellectually and technically landed there, right? However, Saturn moved into Aquarius and I went, oh my God, we're there. Like, oh my
Yeah,
God, we
yeah,
like
yeah,
we have arrived
yeah,
somewhere, or at
yeah,
least we're like outside waiting for the cab. Okay.
yep,
We're like,
yeah,
we're just right there. Cause I don't know about other people's experience, but for me, I literally felt this like tingle,
mm-hmm,
and it has been consistent. And I'm like, oh, this is age of Aquarius, and it is such a different vibration than Saturn in Taurus, or Saturn in Capricorn, right? Like
yeah,
energy. So I
agreed,
was like,
yeah,
ooh, the sparkly tingles are on us. So we're either in the cab on the way
yes,
or we've arrived. But I
yes,
solidly, technically have
yes.
landed at the end of the year to get those two together.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Yeah, I've been thinking about it as like we're in the threshold of the doorway,
Yeah.
like we're stepping in, but I felt it too when Saturn went into Aquarius, and then knowing, of course, we're going to get this last review. And I feel like, the again that Venus, this recreation of culture, we're seeing the breakdown. Everything in Capricorn is showing us how power has been abused, not worked, not not supported the basic needs, let alone bringing forth each human being's genius, which I feel like is the promise of Age of Aquarius. We could
Mhm.
actually use our resources and our technology to meet the basic needs. That just needs to happen globally. But then, even more importantly, really to bring forth that spark of genius, that
Yeah.
when we have that kind of collective intelligence, we can meet these crises in a totally different way, because there's that freedom and there's that diversity of different viewpoints. So I feel like, in a way, the Venus and Gemini is the perfect kind of energy to get us thinking differently and
Mhm.
opening and asking questions and relating and technology, that goes really well with this entrance into the age of Aquarius that we're already, you know,
We're
in
sibling along
entering. We
too.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the nodes too. I really love nodal work. To me, it speaks volumes at the like undercurrent of what's going on. And so again, I don't know that we would be at all prepared for this upcoming age if we weren't getting there, because
Mhm.
it's just so much about the thinking and the information of everything, And I love that it seems to me, in my experience, where that transiting north node goes, like we do those things. Sometimes, when you're reading an aspect, it's like, yeah, it could manifest this way. But when I look at those notes, I'm like, no, look, we're all going to be learning things. But the other thing is this whole year, this idea that we've really not, at least personally, for sure, needed to create anything new,
Mhm.
but we've needed to actually start teaching and giving away the information of the things that we already had. We need to take the old thing and do it just in a new way. We don't necessarily have to go out and reinvent the wheels in our lives. We've already got it. How many times do I see students who have spent tons of time in session with me, and I'm like, just go teach it, go talk about it now. And as soon as they talk about it, that spark of genius is lit up,
Yes.
and I think there's going to be so much more of that. I mean, I know on my side, I was like, well, if I think that that's a good idea, why don't I encourage that? So in this upcoming gift I was talking about in the beginning, I'm not just teaching alone those 4 sessions. I pulled in my classes and I said, you guys teach some parts, because I
Oh,
know you know it.
beautiful.
Right. And that wasn't my idea. That was that some of the tingly was like, well, what about this? And I'm like,
Mm.
oh,
I love that.
okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if you're experiencing that on that side, where it's like, you don't, the development is done.
Oh, I
Give
love
it
that.
now.
Yeah, yeah. And that's also, um, there's that just that generosity and that spirit of giving. It opens up relationships in a different way. And that is like, for anyone that's been working online and creating their brands and creating their online business. You know, it's like the words of wisdom right now is exactly that. Give away your best content, you know, just give value. Like that is the way. Be authentic, give value. And that's all really in the realm of Venus, you know? And so I feel like so many more of us are embarking on this heroine's journey, where we're really aligning ourselves and willing to risk whatever we have to risk to come into our fullest potential. And, you know, this is, I love Brene Brown. Do you follow her work at all?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
This is right in the arena, and her whole thing about getting in the arena, to me, that's the heroine's journey. And it's guaranteed we're going to get our butt kicked for sure. We're going to fail. And so how do we meet that failure? How does that failure help us to be more authentic, more resilient, more committed, more determined to bring forth whatever is our unique offering to bring forth? So I've been thinking about that a lot, and thinking a lot about how, you know, this process of the heroine's journey very much mirrors the Venus cycle. So this is a really good time to get ready. So recapitulate, review, what are those lessons around balance and around whatever those deep wounds were in relationship and intimacy.
Yeah.
And then get ready to start this new cycle fresh and really set that intention to, you know, to be at a new level of learning, to be at a new level of open-heartedness and open-mindedness as we move forth, and to risk showing up more fully as we are, as we do it, you know. So especially with that morning star Venus, you know, when she's going to first appear, and she's all bold and bright and sassy, you know, it's like
just a little spice for us.
Got some spice, like get ready for that, you know.
Yeah. Well, and then that requires to the other side of it, I think, is the allowance of new relationships to really develop in our lives. Juno is over in Libra. Juno takes Venus and makes her so deeply committed that there is something gorgeous that comes from that level of bonding. And that is sometimes, I think, scary for people, or a little bit foreign. It's like you become an adult kindergartner. Like you got to just go out and say, I'm actually trying to be your friend. Do you want to be my friend? Right? Or it requires us to do the thing that is sometimes the hardest and say, I don't know how to do that. Or what's even scarier than that, I think, is, no, I do know how to do that. I can help. Right. Beautiful. But that requires this commitment to relating. And the first relationship is here, right? Like, I think we lack a lot of humility as human beings when we pretend that we are not good at the thing we were built for. Right? Like there is magic to be given. Nobody is asking me to run their government, right? Like, because that's not what I'm built for. But you want to talk about astrology, you want to come to the edge of your soul and see what you have to give. That's something I'm built for. So get in, let's do it. And let's go scoop up these other people and teach them how to have their voice and their balance too. So
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Knowing, claiming what we know, and being willing to not know. And, you know, if you embark on, you know, something that is as wonderfully complex as astrology, you can never know it all. You know, it's impossible. So it's this really beautiful, like, here's what I know. Here's how I can guide you. And it's this infinite level of learning, like in anything that we love, you know, there's all these layers. So, I think getting in there and being willing to show up, and being willing to relate, and being willing to bring in fresh connections, especially with like-minded people with the age of Aquarius. It's like really finding those people that are sharing a similar vision. And some of us have been visioning for a long time. I mean, it's kind of interesting because the last Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, right, May of 2000 in Taurus, I was deep in the sustainability and ecology movement. It was before I got my teaching credential, and I really got it. I was like, okay, if we're going to change culture and we're going to really create a world that's sustainable, we got to start with the early childhood, essentially, is where everything is getting laid down in our brains. You know, that's how to change culture. So back then I was starting to have meetings with people in our community that were re-envisioning, well, what could education look like? So that it's more, you know what I mean? Like, so it's more of a community inspired. And here we are 20 years later, like by necessity, we're finally at a place where we can, because there was enough to hold on to be comfortable with, to go, well, it's kind of working. And now it's like, oh, wow, no, we really get to, you know, we really get to entertain things that we never would have if the structure hadn't fallen away.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of questions. Let's see if we can dig into those,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
we'll head out. So someone is asking, what do we think about the impacts of this towards the stock market? Oh, I lost you. There you are.
Oh,
there we go. Okay. So stock market wise, for me, honestly, I think it just comes back to this idea that many different companies and their stocks and their shares, they have to even review and relook at that, because some of these companies are not prepared to continue on going forward. And I'm talking about some of our big ones. I'm not talking about some of these little mom and pop shops. Some of these big ones are not prepared and have not fully been prepared for what is coming up. So I think that in general, there are going to be big companies that fall off, and that will adjust the stock market in and of itself. But I do think that it will come back up. You know, I have no doubt that as we're traveling through 2021, we start to see the stock market kind of come back into something useful, but there will also be new companies, there'll be new products, there'll be new ideas, there'll be a revision of a lot that makes that happen, because what will be valuable for us will be sustainable things and things in tech. Right. So that's kind of the vision that I see of it. But what about you? If any?
Yeah, that's great. I'm definitely not a mundane astrologer. I don't do a lot of predictions around things like stock markets, but that feels like we're gonna have a dip. That feels like that's coming. And I actually follow some pretty, well-trained mundane astrologers, and they're saying something like that for sure too. So it kind of confirms that intuition, and what you're saying feels right. Like I think there's really a need to bring it down to simplicity, to do more with less. And we haven't had that experience so much in our lifetime. Like the people that lived through the Great Depression, or they lived through like a huge economic shift. So I think that there will be a simplifying that may be pretty dramatic for some of us. And then again, what comes out of that is going to be a new connection to our food systems and our economy, like you're saying.
Yeah. And I'm just getting this kind of buzz. And I remember I was getting this when I did the Uranus and Taurus video, forever ago. But this idea that we as a people could phenomenally change our stock market by going back to barter and trade. And we are already seeing that. Yeah. Many people are just like, I do this, you do that, let's work together. And that would change the game out there, right? Because, and the other thing is, oh, yay, okay, so Venus being in Gemini and also being about conversational relationships, this will change relationships between nations as well. And so if, the United States is looking to pull more things here so that we are sustainable ourselves, this will change the stock market. It will change, and people don't love the phrase, and I think there's a lot of fear attached to it, but New World Order, right? But I don't think New World Order like, oh my God, scary, bad way. But when we change relations and allies and how we interact, that's just a new ordering of things, right? So if we were to do that, and I think we're in the process of trying, that would change everything if we're trying to pull that kind of level living here back into the United States. So
yeah, that resonates for sure. And that we're really, I see us as in this very potent portal time between now and that December 21st meetup of Jupiter Saturn. Yeah, we are creating the new order. There is going to be a new order. And yeah, there's like the dystopic version of that, those sci-fi movies that none of us want to be in. And then there's the utopian version. We're like, yeah, humans, we made it, Yeah. So we're creating it now. And on some deeper level, it feels like how we're meeting this global pandemic is part of how we're creating, our vision of what's coming next. If that, if that makes sense, almost like a preview of how are we going to do this thing? Oh, it's going to be wildly unknown. We're going to have to be flexible. We're going to have to stay open in the face of all of this quick change. And it's getting us ready.
It's definitely, and I think that's happening. Obviously, we talked about it quite a bit for people personally too. It's like, where's the coronavirus in your relationships? And they're the relationships that have been in your life for a very long time. Structure, Saturn, and your lifetime is going, hey, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want people coming to dump their emotional garbage on me. I don't want to be the victim. I don't want to do any of that. So we're also making new alliances personally as well. And it's neat because those big old balls of energy out there, if we are a reflection of what they've got going on, when they shift, we've got to as well. So I think we're following nicely in the pattern of design built for us. We just have little eyeballs. That's it. That's the difference. Good. I'm going to see if we have any more questions, and then maybe we'll head out of here. Oh, so somebody did ask, do we think because history tends to repeat itself that this cycle could lead to a war? And I would just, we are already in one, right? We are fighting the thing that we can't see globally. That's just one example, right? Having a good old pandemic, especially one that you can now, we're talking about it even as of today, you can be an absolutely active carrier of coronavirus and have not a single symptom at all. So we're fighting something we can't see. We are also fighting because the system has tried to change our daily routines. It has pushed on our Tauran energies, right? Like, oh no, you are uprooting things. So there is a little mini war, I think, happening already. But globally, I just don't know that I buy into that at this time, right? I do think that down the road, just looking at even the Saturn-Pluto conjunction at the beginning of the year, I do think that Jupiter ruling over Japan's energy will be interesting because they're a quiet player right now. China's a much larger, louder player right now. But China is known in history for changing sides when they're not getting what they're wanting. But Japan's a nice quiet player that can come in and create a new ally. And then that would be a changer on the stage as well. So that's very mundane, but
I like that. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's great to think about it in that way. I wanted to drop down a couple dates around history repeating itself that I think are pretty interesting.
Okay.
Because this person's asking to if we have time for that. Is that
yes?
Okay.
Yes.
So okay, so yeah, what you said, we're in a war. Like, we've lived in this dominator culture for as long as we've known it. So even if we don't see, people shooting each other, some people are in that situation. They live in an environment where people are warring out the window, or we don't see it, but it's happening overseas. We have been very much in a war culture for a long time. And so to me, it feels like this is our chance to do something different.
Right.
And that goes back to creating a culture that's based on partnership and not domination. And so what I find so fascinating, two things I want to make sure that your people get to know is that this is the first time that Venus has started her cycle meeting the sun in the sign of Gemini since 2012. And then before that, 2004. So, and those were both in June. So those are really good dates to go back to, because what happened is a once in a lifetimer in that Venus was visible, tracking across the sun. We can't normally see her, right? But every 248 years, Pluto cycle, we get to see Venus visibly track across the sun. And this is actually what turned me on to Venus. I actually saw that in 2012, and I got this whole transmission. It changed everything. And Venus hasn't been there since. So 8 years ago, we got to see her visibly And then 2004, we got to see her visibly. 2004 is when the whole Facebook thing really started, you know, and then 2012 was the end of the Mayan calendar. Like there was these big shifts in consciousness, right? People were just really like, okay, something big is changing. We don't totally understand what it is, but you know, the end of one cycle is changing in the beginning of another. So I would call 2012 the precursor to the age of Aquarius from then till now. And so it's potent in that way that we're going to be in the same energetic of Venus and Gemini as those cycles. We won't get to see that again in our lifetime. You know, we won't get to actually visibly see them. But what is even more interesting is I was going back and I was looking at the last time that Venus was visible tracing across the sun. So from 1518 to 1526, and then from like 1751, I think, to 1769, those were the two dates that she was tracking across the sun, right? And so what was happening in that time was both this exploration. You know, these European people were going around the world and discovering discovering lands that were already inhabited, you know, and you know, and yet in Europe there was also this like you know, the 1500s was the Renaissance, and then the 1700s the Age of Enlightenment, right? So within that particular culture that now has really informed, you know, Western culture generally, there was all this opening and art and loveliness, but what was actually happening on the ground was this real changing of what I would call the indigenous humans on the earth, the people that were living close to the earth in some way. And I'm just watching, like, who isn't watching Outlander? You know, that was right during that period, right? Okay, so who were the Scots? They were like indigenous, more indigenous, you know, lived close to the earth. And in that show, you can see it. The French, the English, they're all like so disconnected. Their powder and their wigs and their makeup, not that that stuff's not fun, but clearly they don't have that like, like, I know the earth, I know how to hunt, I know how to farm, you know, that like real indigenous connection. And so I just find that super, super interesting. And I've been geeking out on it. And, you know, it's like this guy, James Cook, who is one of the European explorers, actually had a special trip to go to Tahiti in order to see Venus cross the sun. You know why? Because they were going to measure the solar system. They thought, well, if we can see Venus crossing the face of the sun, we can actually measure the solar system. So they go to Tahiti, you know, for the first time, and they're met with like warm beaches, you know, friendly people not wearing many clothes, as much fruit as they could eat, and these delicious fruit. Like, it was so
Venetian.
Venetian. And then, you know, they saw the Venus cross the face of the sun, but on the ground, like they saw heaven on earth in a sense. Like they saw such a shocking for them example of that partnership culture. But did they get the memo? No, they did not. It was like, go back home. You can create this where you live, right? Like, don't keep colonizing. Like go figure it out for yourself. No, they didn't get that memo. So I feel like in a way, you know, everything's progressed in so many ways since then. But we can get the memo, right? In a sense, like we can globally get the memo that we have the ability to create these amazing micro communities wherever we are, and to really be in that kind of relationality, trade, barter, growing food, whatever we need to do in order to weather what's coming, which is this you know, like a disconnect from a level of convenience and ease from being able to just order something from China and get it, you know. And, it's kind of bringing us back to that more earth-based existence that all of us have had at some point, no matter where we come from. We had ancestors that lived really close to the earth. So I'm feeling that so strong with the Uranus and Taurus vibe, and you know, the age of Aquarius, that there's something about really, really remembering that we know how to do it on a human level. And not to say, you know, there wasn't especially in Outlander, obviously that maybe that's not the best example because they were all killing each other all the time, but there's a certain hardiness and a certain earth-based connection that, you know, I think that many people will probably return to on some level at this time. Like, where's my food coming from? Where's my water coming from? Who do I know? You know, how do I get my basic needs met? So I thought that was pretty cool. That James Cook story just kind of, you know, like blew my mind, actually.
Yeah, well, and it's neat when we find these things where it's like, ah, okay, look, because they were just these people, we're just human beings, just out there doing what we're doing right now, trying to discover and being in what was going on. So it's neat to see. I think it's neat to find stories like that of connection and stuff like that. So I definitely do think we have the potential more so to be in a space of cyber warring, because obviously that's the thing. We've been doing so much and sharing so much of our information and things like that online, right? That as we get into places where there is more thievery of information, it's going to become even more critical that we do have these communities that are like, yes, turns out you really are you in the whole, because someone else is maybe pretending to be you, right? There's just this big place of truly getting back into the ground because the information may be gone. Right? And then Saturn in Aquarius, how do we protect, how do we make serious and get serious around technology? Zoom has been my favorite example here lately. And I have to say, look, I'm going to say it again, you guys. I'm so excited about that company. They are the prime Saturn and Aquarius example for me, because they just built a little platform that was working out. People were hosting their business. The world was right. They genuinely believed that they had security at its finest and for what it was for. They were doing all right. But like Saturn does, when it comes in, Saturn shows you a big old lesson, like right away, right? And immediately they've got 200 million people on this platform, and they're like, we're not secure. We're not secure. Oh my God, we have to grow up here, right? Because Saturn's the grow up, get serious energy. And they dropped everything to go, shit, we got to figure out security. And that is what they have been doing. And I'm so proud of that company, because that's it. That was the exact replication, I think, of what happens to people. Saturn blows in and you've been thinking it's all good in the woods. And then you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do that. Oh my God, I don't know how to use this computer. Oh my God, I don't know how to use my Fitbit, right? Like these things that you just haven't known how to engage with, and you get serious about it and how to protect yourself and how to engage at a different level, because it will still be a part of society. But then how do I take that and share information that is probably very grassroots? It's this cool middle ground of that opposition that she presented, being across from Uranus. So cool stuff is happening, you guys. But we are doing it together. That's the good news here. And even if we're just doing it via Zoom, who's not messed up tonight? So
thank you, Zoom.
Thank you,
Thank
Zoom.
you so much, Stormy, too. That was fabulous.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to visit us at my little cyber house where I bring snacks, and it's very Tauran.
Yay.
The majority of my chart is Venus, so I just feel like there needs to be a snack most of the time.
I agree. I agree.
Yes, I appreciate you being here. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Check out more of Sasha and her work and follow her. She's got so much good stuff to say. And if you do want to learn more about the Venus cycle, man, she is on top of it. So I appreciate you being here, and just say bye to everybody, and we'll get out of here.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, guys. We'll see you next time. Okay, I got to figure out how to get us out of here now.
Technology.